And welcome to this morning's edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Very happy to have you guys with us, although you may not be as happy with us as perhaps you have been in the past because all of our theories went up in smoke yesterday. Just an absolute disaster. We only gave out one prediction on the ball game, and that was the Orioles game against the Toronto Blue Jays. And what we recommended that you go ahead and whoever won the first game of this doubleheader, you go ahead and bet the other team in the second game, and then of course Eric Lauer was starting for the Jays in that second game, and he was the only listed pitcher in the early postings about this doubleheader. The Orioles were approaching it with a certain amount of, I guess, vagueness. And so, I mean, all of the principles apply. You have a better pitcher going for a team that had been red hot. They're battling with the Yankees there for first place. They have a four-game advantage now. It was up to, what, 5.5? And they get clobbered in the first game. So you're thinking, all right, they'll make amends in the second game. Almost every doubleheader seems to be a split if you tracked it. We've talked about it before through the history of baseball. Probably going to come up with the majority of doubleheaders being split. Is it in excess of 70%? Maybe if it is, and depends on the price that you're getting. And I would imagine many of those included teams that had lost the first game and were getting a bit of a price in the second game. You're probably way ahead lifetime. You just do the simplest thing. I used to be a couple of theories were applicable that you could count on. And the problem was, would you have the discipline to stick with it and do it from opening day of whatever season it was, whether it was the NFL or Major League Baseball? There was the three-game streak theory in Major League Baseball that veteran, degenerate baseball handicappers used to figure, okay, you can grind out a living this way. You're not necessarily going to make a spectacular splash one day to the next, but you can go ahead and if you were parlaying this, certainly that was a mistake because all streaks will come to an end. But anytime a team won three games or lost three games in a row, you would bet that team to continue that streak, either side, win or lost, until the streak was snapped. And we've had many examples of teams that have gone on long winning streaks this year and teams that have been on elongated losing streaks. So I don't know if the math adds up in this particular season. I don't know if people are even doing that anymore. But it was a theory that I used to track, and you would have had great success. You would have ended up making a profit for the year almost every year since Abner Doubleday said, hey, this looks like fun. And the same principle also was applicable to the National Football League, where it was a common theory that you could bet against in the point spread. You could bet against the defending Super Bowl champion in every game the ensuing year because naturally everybody thinks, like would be the case with Philadelphia, that they are going to be overbet, and that would end up in a very favorable spot for those that were going against them because they would have a losing record against the spread. I don't know if that theory is still appropriate, but it had been very effective for a long period of time. And I used to track that and say, my God, look at this. This is so simple. You don't even have to think. You could just go ahead and MD out on this. You do it from day one. It's almost like betting cards on the blind, where there was a game. I don't know if you guys remember it because you don't see it as commonly in casinos anymore. And I find that surprising. Either people got wise to the idea that it wasn't a favorable game to play, or the casinos, for whatever reason, I can't imagine that they abandoned this game's availability because they were losing money to it. But it was a Caribbean stud poker. And many people would just go in no matter what on every hand. The rules were extremely advantageous for the house. Many times you would have a good hand and the dealer wouldn't qualify, and you would end up with squadooch. You'd get your ante back, and that was about it. And the bet that you made was a non-factor because if the dealer didn't qualify with certain conditions, I think it was like they had to have ace queen or something. I don't know, some ridiculous consideration. And so many times you'd be sitting there with a full house thinking you were about to get paid. You finally got a great hand, and you end up with nothing. And they give you the ante, which naturally you were anteing up the lowest amount of money possible. And it turned out to be a disaster. But I don't see those Caribbean stud poker tables available anymore. I used to find it literally in the Caribbean and in the Bahamas, and occasionally you would find them in various casinos. But and rarely is a new game developed, a new casino game developed that is favorable to the player. We know that. But people would play it on a blind, and they would have great success. I knew people that said, "Hey, I just go in every hand. I make the bet. My luck, of course, the dealer would go on a streak that was reminiscent of Johnny Chan in the World Series of Poker, and win virtually every hand and qualify every time." But people found that to be a successful strategy. In this case, you're talking about baseball and football betting, where you're literally just betting on a blind. You're going with the trend, and it works for you. So neither worked out yesterday, as we ended up just taking it right on the proverbial chin there, as the Orioles shellacked the Blue Jays in Game 1. You're thinking the Blue Jays come back in Game 2, which we had predicted here on the show, and they're going to win the game. They lose it 3-2. Rushman double in the 8th inning does us in, and after getting a decently pitched game by Lauer, who we had thought was going to be a force in that one, he goes 5 innings, gives up 2 runs. He's in a duel the entire way with the Orioles pitcher, and they end up winning the game 3-2 on that 8th inning double, and we end up losing our money. So that was combined with the day we had before, where I was in agreement, in accord with our man Mike Jones on a couple of games, and of course Mike gave out 5 games that day, and he would have been 2-1 if he wasn't in accord with me on a couple of games. And we ended up, just getting punched right in the face. Like the great Bert Sugar used to say, you can't win a fight when you're blocking too many punches with your face. A lot of good stuff coming up. I'm noticing some line movement here. We've talked about this, and I had a conversation yesterday we were discussing on another program that I do with Jason Cole. He's with the 33rd team. He's been a long time NFL insider, if you will. I don't know. There are a lot of insiders now. It seems like everybody is qualified in that category. Cole happens to be very, very sharp, and the 33rd team is a website that was developed by Mike Tannenbaum that has many prominent guys working for them. And Cole gave a great overview of what to look for in the NFL season. And he thinks you're insane if you're betting preseason football, as do I. And yet, there's a lot of pushback on that. A lot of people think that, oh, well, you're crazy, DeForrest. I'm betting the preseason. In fact, I don't even bother with the regular season because I'm so flush from betting preseason football. And that was the case with the unders last year, where the unders were largely prevailing to the tune of like 70+%, kind of situation that you can only dream about if you're a gambler. And everybody's making money but me. And being laughed at, mocked, disparaging remarks. Look, the internet is not kind, and social media is not kind if people think you're a buffoon. They're more than ready to point that out. And I felt somewhat foolish when I'm looking at the statistics and saying, you know what? These guys were right. Now, will that hold up over a long period of time? Because we have no idea what the approach is going to be, various teams in the preseason. But I do see some line movement here. The Lions, who were favored by 3 and a hook over the Chargers as recently as a couple of days ago, in anticipation of this Hall of Fame game, which is usually a brick of a contest. And the over-under has stayed and remained at 32 and a hook. But the Lions now are only 1-point favorites in this ballgame. I don't know, did any news come out of any significance about is Dan Campbell going to go ahead and eat like a live boar before the game to try and inspire his team? Well, and maybe they'll be so repulsed by it that they don't play the kind of game that he's looking for. You just wonder what it is that they're trying to accomplish in this ballgame. What does Jim Harbaugh have to prove in this first preseason game, especially when his team is going to be playing an extra one? You would imagine preservation is the main goal. Just get through the freaking thing and end up facing your other 3 preseason games and trying to avoid any serious and catastrophic injuries. The Lions, I would think, are especially cognizant of the idea that they can't afford to get anybody hurt. That their defense last year under Aaron Glenn was decimated. Glenn did a great job keeping that team together and in contention, considering the number of players and star caliber players that they lost defensively. They've already had some setbacks on the defensive side early in training camp, can ill afford to have their backups even get hurt because they're going to be seeing a lot of playing time early in the season. So I don't know what would have pushed that line 2.5 points in the direction of the Chargers. But did Harbaugh come out? Did I miss something? Did he have a press conference saying, "Hey, we're absolutely going to win this game. I'm going to guarantee it"? What is he, Joe Willie Namath, all of a sudden? So that's been kind of an interesting development to see that line move in that direction. A lot of baseball action today, and I don't know that we should venture into it because I'm looking at that. The Yankees have been stinking the joint out. They're taking on the Rays. They managed to win a game last night after looking like they were surely going to be tagged with a loss. Mets and the Padres going after each other, and the Padres slight favorites in this game. You're getting 126 to 100 if you're betting the Mets. And you got to lay 104 to win 100 on the Padres in this game. By the way, Fernando Tatis, this guy was a shortstop. He's out there in right field. He looks like Roberto Clemente, a great defensive player. He's not hitting at quite the level that we've expected from him in the past or seen from him, but he's not doing badly. I mean, it depends on what your criteria is for judgment because used to be if a guy was hitting 265, you were thinking, hey, who are you, Hector Lopez? But now if a guy's got modest batting average but has some decent power stats, he's tantamount to being a Juan Soto type of superstar. So that's interesting because the Mets are in a dogfight now, just a half game up in the National League East on the Philadelphia Phillies. Orioles and Blue Jays. Could the Blue Jays drop 3 in a row to the Baltimore Orioles, who had kind of thrown in the towel in their season, or so it seemed, wildly underachieving for what the anticipation would be? They fired their manager early in the year. Can they just continue to pound on the Blue Jays in this series? A lot of interesting stuff developing there. And, of course, you have other activity that you can wager on, including a lot of tennis taking place and some upsets. I guess we missed out on this one, the bounce theory in tennis, where somebody, in this case, it was Leylah Fernandez, who made that great run. Didn't she lose the U.S. Open final after beating a bunch of real heavyweights? She kind of established herself, and I think she lost to Emma Raducanu, who's had her struggles since she won the U.S. Open, but is having a nice bounce back year this year. But Leylah Fernandez won last week's tournament, and these are all preludes to the U.S. Open on the hard courts, and it's a circuit that's been established. And she goes out and has a great victory to win the championship, beating the lovely Anna Kalinskaya, who is yet to win a tournament, surprisingly, but she's won over the hearts of many, including at one point Jannik Sinner, who has dumped her for an even more I don't know that she's more attractive, but I guess in Sinner's eyes, hard to find somebody that would be more appealing than Kalinskaya. They seem to be a great pair, but much like Tsitsipas and the lovely Paula Badosa, relationship up in smoke. Sinner now with some hellacious looking, just absolutely stunning model. Kalinskaya finally got to a final round of one of these WTA tournaments and unfortunately fell to Fernandez. But Fernandez coming out of that, and we've seen this a couple of times. Jessica Pegula, after winning a major, goes out and gets crushed in her next match, exits in the first round in a huge upset. I don't know what the odds were on the Leylah Fernandez match, but she gets bounced in the opening round. And you have some interesting matchups taking place in that tournament that's is in Montreal. You had a good matchup yesterday with Coco Gauff, Danielle Collins. And you have in action today Osaka, who's trying to rebound and get her game back together. Madison Keys. You have Iga Swiatek, who has been playing really, really well this season, including winning a Grand Slam last time out. And many interesting matchups, including you have Maria Sakkari, who I thought was really going to be something special at one point in time. She was ranked all the way up there in the top 10. And she's going against Pegula, who has had her ups and downs this season, even though I have great respect for her and what she's accomplished, part of that billionaire women's club that competes in women's tennis, along with Emma Navarro, who seems to be there or thereabouts, prevailed. I mean, she dominated her first round match, Emma Navarro. Is she a championship caliber player, regardless of whether or not the top players like Sabalenka are in the field, which I believe she is not in this tournament? But yeah, you have some interesting matchups taking place today. And this would be kind of cool. You have Jeannie Bouchard, who was out of tennis for a little while. Beautiful girl who captured the hearts and imaginations of many tennis fans. And she's going against Benchik, who's having a real good season and has accomplished a lot. So the Canadian fans will definitely be behind her. The crowd was raucous. Can Bouchard, who I would think would be a significant underdog to Benchik, can she pull it off, inspired by the crowd again today? So a lot of good betting options out there if you're betting and playing into tennis. Fernandez lost to Maya Joint, who I hadn't seen too much of. A redheaded girl who made a nice showing in her most recent outing in tournament play. Could she have been expected to beat Fernandez in the opening round match? Probably not. I would imagine you got a pretty fat price on that. But some interesting options out there if you're betting besides what's on the baseball card. But the curiosity of the day, and we'll get into this a little bit tomorrow with Mike Jones, will be the first football game. Could you call it any significance of the season? And that would be the Hall of Fame game. I'm not even inclined to dedicate the time to watch that game in its entirety. I suppose it would become more interesting if you had a wager on it. I'm thinking prop bet wagers may be prohibitive because you're going to have substantially backups in there the entire way. So I don't know how positive you feel about or confident you feel in making wagers based on players that you rarely get to see and may not get to see during the regular season. But that will be the first action. And the line move. Very, very curious to see that 2.5 points have been shaved off what was a reasonable favorite in the Detroit Lions going against the Los Angeles Chargers in that one. So we'll get into that tomorrow a little bit on the show. Good luck, everybody. I'm going to be watching some tennis today, see if I can find something that we can give you as watching what players are starting to emerge and get hot as we move closer and closer in this hardcourt season towards the U.S. Open that's taking place in September. And hopefully we'll turn our baseball fortunes around. I'm afraid to even make a prediction after going 0-3 this week. So we'll spare you that and hope that you'll join us tomorrow. And we'll get very specific about all of that with the great Mike Jones. So thanks so much for tuning in. Good luck with all your bets. One more day till the football season gets underway with this Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio. And for everybody connected with the program here on NoFilter.net, I'm Jeff DeForrest. We'll see you tomorrow in the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.